All right, so we're here in the cabin in the woods in Vermont, and I'm sitting here with Colin, and we're successfully made a little fire, and we're chatting and talking about what are we talking about? Survival.
Surviving
What would we do if we had to survive off the land?
when the system crashes.
Well, the system could crash or something could happen, and we were talking about that. So,
Seems like there's like a lot of popular kind of apocalyptic zombie movies and things like that now where people are in these kind of scenarios. So
yeah,
I
there
kind
has
of
been
wonder
for a
if
while.
it's in like the zeitgeist a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to people on the internet speculating.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think regardless of whether we get to that all-out kind of crash scenario or if it's just people who don't have a lot of money, I think that everybody benefits when they embrace a minimalist and kind of survivalist mentality at times, even though it does seem sometimes perhaps a little bit pessimistic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people need their little slice where they know that they're safe and they can just make it, day to day,
Mm-hmm.
without some system that's kind of putting pressure on them, like debt wise. And for a lot of people, especially here in Vermont, there's so many people who live very, very close to the subsistence level, very close to the margin. And, they're not making a profit for the most part. They're just covering their costs.
Mm-hmm.
But they make it back by growing some of their own food, having their own land, composting outhouses, wood stoves, gathering like materials, and you'd be surprised by how many people make it through the winter on very, very little here. And so I think in some ways those people are going to be more prepared if the system does crash,
Mm-hmm.
even though we may not think very much of them in our normal life, especially for those of us who live in cities. But I also think people who live in cities, and you might have this experience as well, but I certainly know a lot of people who sort of fantasize about having a little place in the woods,
Yeah,
that they can go to.
I heard often actually
Yeah, yeah,
people who would like to have that little piece of land or somewhere to go where they can
yeah.
just leave the city and find salvage somewhere where they can or grow food even. That's a big
Yeah.
topic. That's a big discussion. Wanting
There's
to grow food or I'm going to go do that or that's my plan in the next year or
Exactly.
two.
There's some great YouTube channels that I've found that kind of, like I've been into obviously a lot of the economic YouTube channels and stuff that's maybe a little bit more conspiratorial and crypto stuff. But the channels that I've been enjoying the most recently are ones that are either kind of survivalist based or like wilderness living based. I can't remember the names of some of them. There's this one guy who builds his own cabins in Ontario. He just goes off with a set of tools, literally in the woods, buys some like random plot of land, and by hand over the course, he like films himself, and over the course of, I don't know, a couple months, he's got his whole log cabin, everything ready to go.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Is he cutting what's he doing for wood?
He's cutting down the local lumber.
Don't you have to dry it first? How does
Yeah,
that
he
work?
smokes it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, he just shows you the whole, like he's so skilled, and I remember like watching it and actually being kind of envious. Like, I do all this computer work, and it's cool, and like, yeah, it's, it's modern or
Mhm.
whatever, but there's a side of it that feels useless, like, to be
Mhm.
honest.
Right.
And it's like, I don't have that skill that that guy has.
Yeah, but you and how many men think like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course I could quote unquote learn it, but I really would have to stop what I'm doing and kind of, like, I'd have to really embrace that learn all of the techniques, because it's handcrafted stuff, and people don't even do that much anymore. Like even woodworkers, they go out and they buy, you know, mechanical, electronic saws and, you know, diesel generated stuff. So, yeah, there is actually a really good documentary of this guy, I think it's called like One Man Alone in the Wilderness or something, and it's this guy from the 1960s, I believe, who was a Navy officer who went into Alaska and built a remote cabin like in this lake in Alaska for himself. Brought in pretty much minimal survival stuff, you know, like some like canned jam and things like that. And the rest, he pretty much survived on his own. Like he hunted and fished, and he filmed himself. He filmed himself making his own cabin. And that cabin is still there. I think it's called, his name is Dick somebody or another. I forget his name. But it's really awesome footage, like watching him actually just carve out all of this material and then like build it from scratch. And then surviving like this brutal winter, you know, in Alaska. He was saying like, oh, it's toasty in my cabin, it's 45 degrees. So, yeah.
No, it's great. Now you stay in here in the winter, right?
I do. I come out here in the winter. I think the winter is actually my favorite time to be out here, especially if there's like a snowstorm, you know, or even a really, really cold night. Some of the bitter cold nights I've come out here, I'll sleep on this bed and only half of my body will be warm because it's the wood stove.
Right.
And like this side you just
face
feel cold.
the fire.
Yeah.
So, okay, just to give the viewers a little bit of an idea of where we are, your mother owns the property, and there's a beautiful home to the left of this cabin out of the woods. Right now we're in the woods, facing this incredibly gorgeous view. Anyway, so you would love to build kind of like a tiny house or something.
Yeah, like an A-frame or something.
Right.
Around here.
In the woods here, yeah. So any ideas what you want to do, or thoughts of, you know, this is all survival stuff, right? Just being able to live off-grid.
Yeah, basically I want to have kind of an off-grid type of place. I'll probably build an A-frame because the snow here is pretty intense in the winter.
Right.
And I'm not going to be here, like half the time I'm going to be back in Canada, in Ottawa. And I don't have to worry about like my roof collapsing when I'm not here.
Sure.
So
A-frame is the idea then.
A-frame is the idea. Actually, A-frames are really, I would suggest if anybody's looking into this type of thing where they want their remote property, go with an A-frame. You'll never have to worry about it in terms of like weather and stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, an A-frame with a wood stove, loft on top.
Yep.
We'll probably build a foundation of some kind. And yeah, I think I'm gonna try to learn like a little bit of gardening maybe, you know, once it's up. And I'd like to learn a lot of carpentry skills and other things that I don't know to help build it. So I'll have like a skilled craftsman that I'm working with, and I'll do the simpler stuff, you know, a lot of the grunt work, and then he might be able to show me some things that I can kind of learn. And that's to help reduce the cost, right? Because a lot of people won't be able to afford something like that. But if you can get just a piece of property in the wilderness for yourself, or if you have friends and you guys can kind of go in on it together, buy a plot of land, and then learn how to build something small, even something like this. Like this whole thing here was like with the wood stove was a little bit more, but it was like a $10,000 setup, right? And like, you know, if you just have some friends, you want to do a cabin in the woods of your own, you can do that. And if you have basic survival skills, like, you know, how to pump like charcoal water filters, and you know, you've got canned food, you can still come out to a place like this and survive. You know, if there was a real systemic collapse, you could survive weeks, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Whoa!
There we go.
Yeah.
Put the fire out. Oh, don't pick that up. Okay, we're good.
Good. So,
Survival 101.
exactly.
How to pick up burning wood
How to
off the
not
floor.
burn your cabin down. Actually, lots of dangers in cabins. Carbon monoxide
Yes.
is a huge danger. I've definitely slept out here a couple times where like I didn't have the ventilation working so good, and I woke up with like a headache. And,
For sure. You have to watch for that.
yeah. So, and like the last thing that I'll say about this topic is, we were talking about this earlier, that like I think the whole survival mentality is something that actually can pull people together across the political spectrum, because it's so basic to everybody, you know.
Yeah.
So people, even in the city, like city folks can relate to it, country folks can relate to it, and I think it's something that, I think it's a future we're all probably going to have to face, because let's face it, most people are not wealthy right now. We see a lot of podcasts that talk about how to build wealth and et cetera, and that's great. Like, I totally encourage people to figure out how to work the capitalist system to their advantage, but realistically, not everybody's going to make it, and realistically, not everybody's going to be in that top tier, right? It's just the way the system works.
we don't know 100% anything.
Right, exactly.
But we can prepare for the worst, and
yeah,
and not to be fearful, but to be cautious and to be prepared
right.
as much as you can be for anything,
Right.
anything in something like this. So, I mean, build an A-frame, keep your nano ledger or your treasure.
Yeah, get a safe with it.
Safe, yeah.
Get a safe.
For sure. I mean, water, food,
If you have your own
essentials.
property, get a safe.
Definitely plant food if you can plant food. I
Buy
mean,
precious metals
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, sure.
Um,
I mean, we do a lot of other things. Why can't we do those things, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's not hard.
yeah.
Yeah, no, this is cool. This is really cool. It's fun being here, meeting your mom, being in the woods, and just this whole experience. Vermont's beautiful. I love it here. It's such a great country here.
Yeah, it's really like, for me, it's the perfect location for me the perfect like state to get a bug out property is Vermont, for a variety of different reasons. There's plenty of other great places around as well. Quebec's a good spot. Upstate New Hampshire and Maine have some great places for cheap. But in terms of the resilience of the community and like the people who live here, and the variety of people who live here, because we were talking about this earlier, like people in Vermont don't really identify too much extremely with one extreme or the other, or even a lot of them don't even really identify with the U.S. They just kind of feel like they're their own place.
Right.
And that's a nice thing, especially in a divided, political spectrum that we live in now. Everybody looks out for each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's it. It's great. It's community living, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely perfect here. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. That's it. We just wanted to chat a little bit about life and survival while we're sitting here in the cabin in the woods.
Good.
All right. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.